Hi, this is Jan Uhelski from Rhapsody, and we're speaking to Marilyn Manson today. Hi, Manson. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Los Angeles,
Oh, okay.
Hollywood.
Speaking about this new album, that's basically what I want to talk about, is your life has gone through so much upheaval since your last album. What was the thing that changed the most for you?
That's a very expansive question.
Yes, we have to choose one thing.
Well, I think being able to, surrender, sacrifice, let down my guard. I think that I can look back now and realize that I was seeking a lot of other outlets, not just because they were satisfying, but I was trying to put efforts towards simply painting or making films, pretty much everything except music, because I was running away from being me. I was in a position where I didn't think much of myself. I didn't want to be me, and I have a hard time relating to the person that I was last year because I feel like I was fortunate enough to have figured my way out of that hell that I created for myself.
Yeah.
And I think if it were a movie, the moment where the dramatic change happened, if I had to pick that out and remember things, as complicated as my life was at the time, it was singing the song Just a Car Crash Away, and I only really sang it twice, and the second time is what is on the record.
Yeah.
And the song made me feel something in a time when I didn't think I could feel anything anymore.
Wow.
So I started to realize that music is what I always turn to when I am sad or I want to let out some aggression or whatever it might be. And it was foolish of me to almost have left music altogether, and I can't possibly imagine myself thinking or being like the way I was before making this record ever again.
Have you gone through similar watersheds in your life? I mean, you know, you have those small moments. One has those small moments where everything turns, you know, like you can never see it coming, but when it's there, it's almost like it has a sense of inevitability. Has this been like the first time you've had your life so totally turned upside down?
Well, in this way, it was in a way that I had never expected and maybe feared the most. People have always asked me what my greatest fear is, and I've always said the inability to create or express myself. And, you know, I've had plenty of crazy periods in my life. I don't think there's ever been too many sane ones at this point. But what's different about how I felt in making this record was more, I suppose in the past I've been, you know, self-destructive, I've been angry, I've been self-loathing, but there was always some feeling behind all of it. And a lot of times I think it was anger or resentment or some sort of drive, and I got to a point where I didn't have any drive. And I think it's probably as simple, if I can look back at, because at the time, I don't think I could have made any of these conclusions or understood any of it. But I know that I can't separate myself from what I do. And when I was put in a position where I felt that the people closest to me wanted me to, or it felt like, it wasn't in so many words, but I was being faced with a lot of strange realizations, particularly in my past relationship, where it was almost a case of, well, I thought that you would grow out of this stage or you would change eventually, and I didn't know what I was supposed to change into, because I knew that I was starting to be somebody that I didn't like to be, but I could only want to be who I was before that. I couldn't be somebody who was suddenly something I don't know how to be and something that I don't want to be. I think you fall prey, and it's as simple as high school. You know, when your relationships are sometimes fall prey to the pressures of the people outside of it and what they want to impose upon either person. And that's pretty much everything I've always thought that I stood against. And I started to be in a place where I was feeling embarrassed for just being me. And I wrote the song Red Carpet Grave, and I think that probably says everything better than I could describe this situation.
Do you feel that after you wrote this record and after you went through your divorce or your separation, that you were returned to yourself, or are you a whole different entity now? I mean, has going through this, like being forged by all this pain, made you different and better?
Well, I came to terms with my humanity.
Yeah.
I think that I've tried so hard to prove how invincible I could be because I was always challenging the world and facing a lot of self-induced conflicts, whether it be with politics or religion. And when you start to feel like you can't communicate to the people closest to you when you spend all your life communicating to essentially strangers, I really didn't know who or what I was supposed to be. And I suppose it's probably, to other people who aren't me, it may even seem a little bit absurd because it's the most normal situation that everybody has to deal with. But I think that I've often imposed my ideals onto the people who are in relationships with me, and I assumed that they felt the same way because they cared.
Yeah, right.
But you know, it's the same with what I create artistically. A lot of people might like the aesthetic, or they might like the type of music, but they don't like the message, or they have a hard time agreeing with every opinion I have about politics or religion. Or it might be they agree with that and they don't like the type of music. But it's hard when the people you're closest to start to genuinely question if that's what you believe or that's who you are all the time, off stage and on stage. And the thing is, I am. And
you feel like yourself at all times. In your best moments, you feel like yourself equally on stage and off stage, like the same being, the same person, right?
Well, I've always been really hell-bent on not separating myself in the sense that it's simply for show. However, you can't be the same person in any two circumstances. But the difference was that I enjoy my on-stage, metaphorically, whatever, the extent that you want to take that. I enjoy that part of my life very much, and I was in a position where I wasn't able to create, and I was thinking, well, I don't enjoy this part of my life, and I didn't know how to change it, and it really became very simple. I just had to make music again, and I had to redefine myself. So I'm feeling like the person that wanted to start a band, but I feel not wiser or even cynical or, that I've grown or matured from the experience, but I feel resurrected and new, like when you shed your skin type of feeling, I suppose. And
like
that's the only way I could describe. I think the only way I could describe how I feel is when you listen to the record, because the songs are almost in the order that they were written for the most part, so you can sense the change.
Of all your records, I like this one the best. I like it because, honestly, it scares me on a whole different level and brings up things for me, and maybe it just mirrors things for me that, are much more frightening than the things that go bump, the things, the self-annihilation. So, I think
I think that's what I like about movies and books, the ones that are psychological and not the obvious, the whole idea of something like Rosemary's Baby, when you don't see the baby, that's really when it's in your head. And I think that I tapped into a part of me that I was afraid to deal with. So when you hear it, I don't know how other people are going to feel when they hear it, but when I listen to this record, and I never really listen to my records because it's a real process to make it, and then you end up performing it. And it's very rare that I listen to something, but I listen to this record, and it makes me feel the way that I needed to feel. So I think I probably needed to say the stuff to me the most. In another way, a lot of the records that I listen to most, you know, whether it's Purple Rain or Diamond Dogs or, you know, Tattoo You, a lot of these records come in a point in a lot of my favorite artists' careers that is essentially where I'm at, or I haven't even got to yet. And they're some of the strongest material. So I was in a position where I thought, maybe I've said everything. I don't know what to say anymore, because a lot of the things that I've pointed out in the past are obvious to everyone now, and there's not really any reason to say them again.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of art and bands and things that have in some way been changed enough that they do things that when I did them, they were a little bit too offensive, and when David Bowie and Alice Cooper did them in their time, it was a little too offensive. And now when they do it, it doesn't have the heart behind it.
Yeah.
But I almost felt, why should I really do this anymore? And I didn't understand that I had to do the most simple thing and turn the magnifying glass onto myself.
Oh no, it's so true, because you know what I think you did, and actually what those artists that you like did in the same kind of way, the same kind of trajectory. I think you spent maybe the first 4 records defining yourself out there and what you believed in, but it was more cerebral. This one is not cerebral. This one is you took a scalpel and you opened up your guts and you poured them out, you know? It's like this is a crisis point record, and what sounds better than pain, really? Because there's no filter.
Well, I think that what I identify with most is tragedy historically, you know,
Yeah.
starting with Shakespeare and with any of the mythologies that I didn't even choose as subject matter. It was just what was in my head on this record, you know, watching a movie like Bonnie and Clyde, the next day waking up and writing Putting Holes in Happiness, you know,
Yeah.
I was affected that immediately, and it's a different way of writing for me. I haven't ever written in the way that I would write a letter, or I would write a you know, God forbid, a poem or something. You know?
Wait, so what was different about your creative process this time? I mean, because you stayed with it, because it came from the subconscious? Like, what made this different?
I was trying to make this record, and in some ways, maybe I didn't want to succeed at it for the greater part of that year. And it was not until things became really, really bad in my personal life and in my living situation where I didn't want to, in the same way Lewis Carroll, he never slept. I didn't want to go to sleep because I didn't want to wake up, because waking up seemed so terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm speaking sort of in a metaphorical sense or
Yeah.
figurative way, but in a little bit of a literal sense, that I was very lost, and it was something as simple as Tim Skold, who probably spent the most time with me of anyone, because I saw him on a regular basis, but our friendship is quite different than other people who would call each other best friends. He's Swedish, so he has a different demeanor that I understand quite well, but other people might think he's cold or uncaring. Mm-hmm. And it's just the way that he relates. So for us together, he's very much order and regiment, and I'm chaos and, you know, instant impulse. And he said to me, well, why don't you write about what you're going through or what you feel? Because I couldn't really explain it to anybody so much in a conversation or in words. And it was that simple that he said that, and I started figuring out an entire new approach. And I had maybe 15 or 20 notebooks filled chaotically with different writings. I even put a very small snippet in the artwork to the album but it wouldn't really be understood unless you saw them all together, because it's a little eccentric, to say the least.
Yeah.
But because I lose things, and I'll write an idea, and it might go across 4 notebooks as I'm trying to find the right one. So I would just lay them all out, and in some ways it was almost like seeing some sort of autopsy of my mind in front of me. And I would pull or be, I guess, inspired by different pieces of it, almost in a William S. Burroughs sort of cut and paste sense, but completely different. And I spent most of my time singing on the floor on my back with a ribbon microphone, which isn't meant to be held in your hand. And, it sounded raw, and anybody who was concerned about making something technically and proper, emotionless, would have complained about it. But I thought it sounded very appropriate because it was the only way I wanted to do it at the time, and I wouldn't have ever dreamed of going back and trying to fix anything, because it sounded like I felt.
When you were looking at all your notebooks, did you see a theme emerging about what you were going through?
I don't think that I really saw something so specific as that until I got to the end, and I could see, but I was too close to it. So when we did Eat Me, Drink Me, mm-hmm. the song's very narrative in a strange way, and it wasn't as calculated as me trying to tie everything together as a concept record, but in a sense, it ends up being maybe the most, the strongest and most complicated concept record that I've ever approached, but it was right there in front of me. The story that I needed to tell was about myself, and not manipulated into a metaphor for the first time. And that song, when we finished it, there was a debate, I think, for maybe a few moments whether it should be first or last, and I think simply because of the lyric that it ends on, it needed to be last. And I knew when we did If I Was Your Vampire on Christmas morning at 6 a.m. when I wrote it, it had to be first, because it was really the song that made me realize this was definitely going to be a record, and there was no question about it.
What about your relationship with Lewis Carroll? I mean, what did you see in him that you mirrored that made you want to do the movie and then name this album Eat Me, Drink Me?
Well, I guess in the beginning I wasn't as aware of the parallels, other than the ones that were obvious to me, between his mental state and the one that I was sort of becoming. I think in some ways a lot of people close to me probably, I don't know if they said it to me literally or probably were saying it, whether they were saying it to me or behind my back or something, that I was becoming what I was writing about more than I thought. Because I started reading his diaries, and I chose to write a script based around the year 1869 when he wrote the poem Phantasmagoria, and he wrote that in January, literally 100 years to the week that I was born.
Wow.
And in his diaries, it's very, very Jekyll and Hyde. It's Charles Dodson, who is a very proper Oxford professor that teaches math, and then Lewis Carroll, who is everything that goes against what his father, who was Charles Dodson Sr., expected of him. And he was very torn with religion. And the thing that struck me the most and the simplest was that he wrote a ghost story after his father died. And this was a man who was supposed to become a priest and someone who believes in the supernatural. It struck me as very odd, so I started reading his diaries, and they were very dark. They were very compelling, and there was much more of the story than the obvious question. You know, the question that people posed to me first, oh, you're writing about Lewis Carroll, was he a pedophile? I think, in my opinion, no.
Yeah,
I don't even address it in my story because I don't think that's the point of it. I think that he's terrified of losing his youth, his
totally
his spirits, and if you look at Alice in Wonderland, there's themes that come up, and you have to, when you read his diary, you understand why. The unbirthday party. His mother died on his birthday, so I'm sure his birthday wasn't a very nice day.
And the funny thing is, that's my birthday. I've always resonated to his birthday, obviously, and it's Mozart's birthday as well.
Well, things come in threes.
Yeah.
So, in the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, there's obvious parallels to The Last Supper.
Yeah.
And what I started to find interesting was that the book is supposedly the second most read book to the Bible, which is interesting because it doesn't ever say that she has blonde hair like Disney portrayed her. It doesn't ever say the Mad Hatter was even wearing a hat. That was just his name.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say Humpty Dumpty was shaped like an egg or anything like that. So I started looking at it and looking at him and seeing all of the parallels. And he was very inspired by Edgar Allan Poe.
Wow.
And Edgar Allan Poe, who of course had this, scandalous sort of Lolita sort of love affair. And then, of course, the book Lolita, a lot of people don't even realize that it was clearly inspired by Lewis Carroll. And Nabokov was the one who translated both Poe and Lewis Carroll into Russian for the first time.
Did this all happen to you before you met Evan? I mean, did you feel like you were like telling
no, at all. Yeah.
I mean, it's like you called this in, I mean, there had to be days where you thought, God, did I create this reality?
In a lot of ways, yes. And the strange thing is that neither one of us really saw it coming. I think it was just interesting that I found anybody who was even familiar with any of the stuff that we just discussed. And so the concept of age and of conflict and the strangeness never really figured into it. And I think that it wasn't even really disappointing to me. I thought it was too cliche, and I can only expect, what people initially started thinking, and even, in my personal life, that things were something different than what they really are. And it was, me finding somebody that I could actually relate to, and it was realizing that I was disappointed in the idea that I spent all my time watching films like The Hunger, Harold and Maude, True Romance, and I was just wanting to hit myself thinking, why isn't my life like that? Because I thought it was, but now I realize that there's such a fear about what's going to happen tomorrow that today isn't any good. I think that I've gone to great lengths from the beginning of becoming whatever it is that I've become now, that I've made my path for myself, and there's no reason why it can't be the way it should be. And I think it's ultimately fear. And I think letting down my guard to write the things that I wrote, and it ended up giving me the first real collaboration in songwriting with Tim Skold, because I had someone who made music that sounded exactly like what I needed to hear. It's almost as if he was scoring what he saw me feeling.
Yeah.
And it challenged me, and I felt really inspired, and I've never had that situation with any guitar players in the past. I've always had to tell them, can you make it sad? Can you make it angry? And it flowed right, and it allowed me to simply concentrate all my strength on what I wanted to say and singing it. And that's all I worried about. And it made me happy to sing again. And I was excited to play it live, and we just finished 8 weeks in Europe, and it was very new and different, and not in the way that I've always hated when somebody comes out with a new record that you like a lot, that's had previous records, and they focus too much only on a new album.
Yeah.
But this stuff was very it was able to transform into the set with the other songs quite well, and it makes for some absurd, greater picture that I'm probably too close to see yet.
I mean, what do you think's the most different about this album, compared to the rest of your canon? I mean, do you think if art is always a state of becoming, this is like the way you're pointing the way, or is it just, another version of the things that you've been singing all along?
Well, if I look back at Mechanical Animals, or I look at Antichrist Superstar in Hollywood, I talked a lot about, the Nietzsche idea on Antichrist Superstar and the transformation. Hollywood, it was very obsessed with the themes of alchemy and that entire way of looking at the world. But this record, to me, has more of both of those things, but it doesn't really talk about them as much as it just is them. So I think that you genuinely, as deep as you want to look into these songs, just if you look at it as a whole, it has more of a transformation and more of becoming something than the records where I talked about those ideas.
Yeah, you definitely.
And I tried to fight to present those ideas as being important. I thought that I had already done that, but I didn't realize that I had yet to do something much more difficult.
Well, I think it's another case of you anticipating your future and creating it, I mean, the things that you were talking about earlier were the things that you would become. I mean, to me, it does seem an extension of everything you've ever written before. And then the essence of what is holy, but now what's holy is much more soft. I mean, to me, like, love is holy in this album. And that wasn't the case in your other albums.
No, it was always maybe either the disappointment or the shallowness of certain ideas that I didn't really understand how to say something in the same way that I say it to people who I'm closest to. Yeah. Something as simple as Heart-Shaped Glasses, the chorus of that song, is something that I literally said, and then I realized, why haven't I really written a song in the same way that I said that? So I was very determined to write a song. But when I look back and now I think about what I say in the course of that song, it really defines my entire, what's that?
It's not about, you say something about don't leave me or don't not love
me. Well, don't break my heart and I won't break your heart-shaped glasses. I think when I look at that, that really defines a lot of the record. This song is very disguised in a sarcastic pop sense, but I wasn't really so much trying to be sarcastic because I think it's a little darker than some people might even think, but because it's all very, very subtle double meanings. But I think that makes me realize how guarded and how afraid I was to surrender myself to someone else by saying something like that. When you say, don't break my heart or I'll break. It ends up saying more to me about how afraid I was to open myself to people.
And are you still happy? I mean, is this as good as you anticipated?
I think anything was better than how I felt before I made the record, but I think I'm genuinely enjoying myself performing, and I'm not in a state where every day it's a question mark if I'm going to be depressed or angry or happy about something. I think that I feel much more in control, but I feel happy that I can say that from a position that does not include sobriety or religion or any other thing that somebody else had to help me find the answer to what was making my life go wrong. So I figured out that it doesn't really matter what you drink, do drugs, or how much. It's why. And I was in a position where I was so, I guess, empty
Yeah.
I didn't even have the motivation to drink. That was pretty bad.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so I think that says a lot.
Day. I guess, what do you think the greatest misconception is about you? And I know that doesn't really tie into this, but I think there's so much that people believe about you, and you polarize so many people. What do you think they always get wrong about you?
Well, people are always believing that I'm trying my hardest to be shocking,
Mm-hmm.
and then love to complain in a very lazy journalistic way, because I know from where I started, I know how easy it is to make yourself sound more amusing as a writer when you're criticizing something than praising it. Right. But I never chose to write about things that I didn't like, because I didn't really feel there was a need for it, although it's fun and amusing sometimes. But I think that it's always a disappointment when people say, I'm trying to be shocking, but I didn't do it. And I've never really tried to be shocking. I think I've tried to make it clear from the beginning. I've tried to uphold the concept that anything that wants to call itself art has to at least be provocative. And to be able to get anyone's attention and for them to have an opinion on it, whether that's hate or love, and I really prefer those extremes, says a lot in an era where the world has become such a victim of itself that it's a little unnecessary to try and point out the weaknesses of everything outside of you. And I was able to point out my own weaknesses, and I think that ends up saying, in some way, what I've always said, because I've always really been trying to hit at the importance of believing in yourself and in the power of not being afraid to stand behind your opinion.
If you had a motto, what would it be? I mean, is there something you say to yourself when you're feeling really terrible, or something that reinforces that idea of believing in yourself?
Well, anything I say will probably sound like a bumper sticker.
Okay, they all do, but they all help.
No, I think...
all right, I'll tell you mine, okay?
Okay.
I have this picture of Madonna, and I'm not a big Madonna fan, but she's in a yoga pose, and it's really dreadful and ugly, and she looks terrible. And it says, if I'm afraid of something, that generally means I have to do it. I mean, I could say be here now, and that'd be worse.
No, I'm trying to think. You put me on the spot. I have a lot of comical slogans.
Well, go for it.
Well, I'm just trying to think. First, I should deliver the more profound one.
Okay, go.
Which I think, I suppose for me, I've spent most of my songwriting on, in some ways, slogans, in a sense, because that's the way I've always grown up thinking. I mean, there was a good chance I could have ended up, becoming an advertising person, except I feel like it wasn't where my heart was. I think when you have the courage to drive off a cliff with somebody who believes in you the same, to trust you and do that, then you don't want to anymore. I don't know if that's a slogan, but that's what I learned, that when you are not afraid to hit bottom or die or give yourself up complete to sacrifice, then there's no need to anymore.
That's pretty great. I mean, that is profound. I've never tried it. I'm not that daring yet.
Yeah, no, you don't have to try it. It's just when you have it in your head. I wouldn't find
No,
a need
I don't
to try
mean for real.
Okay, yeah. You mean
Yoda,
surrendering, yeah.
But Yoda says there's no trying.
Right.
So, thank you. I love the album. I really
Thanks.
did. I every time I take it off the CD player, I really miss it. So you've done a really great thing, and I'm really glad that you're happy.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, bye.